So here's the thing that everybody get your head wrapped around. So 59% of the American people think it's gone too far, including, by the way, 63% of independents. My guess is Democrats are higher than that.
Yeah.
About right. So let's think, who is saying about right? The 26%. And then look at that split in that party, because I'm sure most of them are not saying it's gone too far. They're either in the about right or not far enough. And that is the pickle. That is the thing that's tearing that party apart.
Yep.
And you do have Tucker and others saying it's gone too far, shouldn't have happened. But I'm just saying, I'm talking about the people who answered that question. You've got to believe that 39%, remember, we always talk about, gosh, he's got 36% of the country, whatever, that'll do whatever. It's split, and it's an either or. You cannot put that back together by either calling it off or
correct.
What I want to know is I want to know who the 13% is, because I want them I want them part of my neighborhood watch. I want them living down the street. It's like, remember when there was always, Rick, a certain small group that thought that Rudy was soft on crime?
Oh yeah,
in New York City.
100%.
It's like, who are these people? I wonder,
right.
I want them living in my building, because they're probably really well armed sort of folks. Man, those are terrible numbers, and I don't see how you unring that bell quickly.
Especially with independents being so damaged for him, and the independents helped Trump get elected president in 2016 and in 2024. That's just a brutal, ugly fact of the matter. And they have turned against him in a degree to which I can't even get my head wrapped around it. Those.
Rick, I think it goes to that's something we talked about a lot, the fragility of that election day coalition of Trump in 2024.
Sure.
It was created by these weird forces, a president who shouldn't have run again, who then, I think when they look back on this, no one's going to say, this idea of having a president, have him get out in July, have the vice president come, that really worked great. We should keep doing that.
Yeah, let's not do that again.
Yeah, that sort of model. So it's sort of a freak election in that sense. I think there's every reason to believe that had it been a normal Trump, if Biden had gotten out after the midterms as he should have, he had a thing, Trump probably wouldn't be president. So, usually the last to join are the first to leave for obvious reasons. They're the ones that have the most doubts about it.
Right.
And, I think we spend far too much time, at least the press does, or the chattering class, talking about the approval ratings of the Democratic Party. I don't think it really matters, but people aren't against Trump because they're for the Democratic Party. Those two are not, there's not a price of admission that says you've got to endorse the Democratic Party if you're against, blowing up desalination plants in Iraq.
Well,
in Iran.
CNN and the other pollsters have suddenly discovered that the double haters actually are voting for Democrats. By
2-1, basically.
Yeah, we spotted that in the November elections in Virginia and New Jersey. We talked about it on the strategy session, that the double haters had broken to Democrats and broken away. Yes, the Democrats may have a toxic brand. Guess what? There's something clearly more toxic, and that was all before the war. So.
Let's talk about that. It makes sense logically to me that if you're a double hater, it means you're against the status quo.
Yeah.
And what do you do when you're against the status quo? You either don't vote or you vote for change. You don't vote to reinforce it. So, in a kind of human psychology sense, it makes sense.
Yeah.
And I think that, folks, the double haters, as Joe was explaining, these are people who don't like either party. And you know who Trump got in 2024? Got the double haters.
Yep.
Now it is flipped over wildly. And all the coalition, I think, is affected by this war. And I'm sort of thinking about this on the fly. I think the whole coalition is affected by this war for a couple of reasons. One is the sons and daughters who are going to go over there are the sons and daughters of MAGA voters, and they are MAGA voters themselves.
That's a really
they're being put into the firing line by this guy.
Very interesting.
And Trump's family will never one day face an enemy in combat. Never, not one of them will ever face an enemy in combat. The second thing I think that's happening is there's a disproportionate number of Hispanic and African Americans in the military. And that Hispanic coalition and those young African American men that were tempted by Trump in 24 are now also witnessing the same sense that they're the ones on the front line, not the Trump family, not Donald Trump. And they were promised we'd stay out of foreign wars. And we didn't. So I think that there's, and we've got Mike Madrid coming on the Behind the Numbers on Friday with us to talk about Hispanic numbers and the overall polling picture right now, which is shockingly bad, folks. I want to say this. The three of us on this show have probably consumed more polling than every human being on earth, except for maybe a dozen other people are more obsessive poll readers than we have been in our careers. In the world, I have never seen a portfolio of destruction for the Republican Party like we're seeing now in every poll. Elliot Morris just posted a few minutes ago that Trump is underwater in 135 House seats. That's insane. There are only 25 or so swing seats in the country, but he's underwater in 135 seats. Wow.
I can remember getting a polling briefing from our friends over at Public Opinion Strategies, Rick, and when the numbers were really awful for Bush, and they said in that sort of very serious pollster way, I've never seen numbers like that. And then one of the smart propeller heads that they always brought to these, polling briefings spoke up and said, "Well, there was Bulgaria." Okay.
Yeah, no,
I stand corrected. It's not as bad as the leaders of Bulgaria.
The only thing these numbers are, you can sort of equate maybe, and they're far worse, were Carter's going in the 80 election against Reagan.
Yeah.
They were close to this with independents, but nowhere this bad.
Which goes to Rick's hostage point. Which no one's talking about that, Rick. That's a really interesting angle. How do you see that? You mean hostage like?
I mean, so let's say we have a pilot shot down or an aircrew shot down, and the Iranians get to them before the CSAR guys, the combat search and rescue guys, get to them. People right now have a sort of vestigial memory of the Iran hostage crisis, and as Joe points out about the Carter era, Jimmy Carter was destroyed politically by high gas prices, inflation, and the hostage crisis in Iran. There's a weird echo in my brain. We could end up in that same situation for Trump and the Republicans going into 26 and maybe even beyond, because and I don't want this to happen, folks, God forbid, I pray this won't happen, but combat is combat, and bad shit happens, and planes break and get shot down, and people take a wrong turn down a road during a military operation, they get captured. Things go wrong. And the Iranians understand how to use media and social media to turn that into the only story in the universe. And Trump...
Yeah, that would drive Donald Trump absolutely.
Trump has a feral understanding of television and media. He recognized, and this is my theory of the case, why he put so much into this weekend. It wasn't just because he wanted to save the air crew. It was because he knew if they got a hostage, he was done. His numbers, if they got a hostage, his numbers will be in the mid-teens by next week. It will go so south for him. And I'm not saying this out, to praise the mullahs, but the Iranians are a sophisticated people. They are not Iraq. They are not Afghanistan. They understand media, social media. I mean, you've seen all these Lego propaganda videos. They're fighting it out with Trump on social media everywhere else. They're not stupid. They're playing a game that is required now in modern warfare, which is that you have a front that is in social media and in earned media and in communications, not just in the battlefield itself. And if they get a hostage or they get more than one hostage, we are in for a sea change in the climate of how people view this war. It's already more unpopular than Vietnam was in 1973. It can go bad. it can get worse.